Well, I am glad that everyone is here. That is here. We have a really good conversation today. For those of you that are watching this in replay, we're glad you're here as well. Today I have Reverend Ken Reeves, PhD, who is, a minister and a psychologist. He is also our clinical director and we are excited to have him. We're in a series, a webinar series on that is why is church so hard? I think that's something most ministers are experiencing, just feeling like this is harder than I expected, or maybe this is harder than it was, and so we just wanted to create this room for conversation about what is so hard about church, and really, so I am bringing on a series. This is the second conversation with our expert coaches. These are all people that do programs and coaches for the center, but they're also experts. And so Ken is here to talk about conflict and how that is so hard. Which I was thinking, Ken, this is not new. Conflict is something that's been hard in the church since church has been. And so, but I do think, I don't know if this is your experience, but I think one of the things that's making it harder now is just that there's less common ground in sort of basic assumptions. So, with the polarization in our congregation and in our country, conflicts, maybe they feel a little more heated, or I think ministers sometimes feel less equipped to walk through some conflicts, and maybe people are a little less motivated even now to reduce conflict. Maybe people think that conflict is good, and so I think this is a good time to talk about conflict in the church. And so Ken, um, as you think about conflict, what are some of the things that you think are important as like sort of big picture items to think about when we face the potential for conflict in the church?
Sure. Um, I think of I might think in terms of two, sort of sorted out in two ways. One would be setting it up so that conflicts don't have to escalate, and they can be problem solving and moderate. And then there's the chapter of where, when conflict does happen, and when it's heated, when it's tense, what to do then. So I would, if you like, I can talk about the more preparation or norm setting that would be helpful for congregations so that conflicts, again, don't have to escalate into the stratosphere.
Yeah, so prevention, and then when
Cure.
to the best of our
Prevention and
ability,
cure.
we have we still haven't been able to prevent it from getting to sort of where it's at a higher level. What to do about that?
Yeah, I mean,
But before you do that, I have a question. Is conflict bad?
sure. Not necessarily. It's inevitable. I mean, I think of it as neutral, and that there will be times when somebody's needs are not met. There's a difference. We are different from each other. We're not all clones. Somebody's not happy with something. There would be a conflict. And it's an opportunity to grow closer and find policies and procedures and plans that are wise and people generally also like, that meets people's needs. So it's neither good nor bad. I think it is an opportunity. It's a danger and an opportunity at the same time. The danger is it could go badly and could leave people with a lot of hurt feelings and pain. It's an opportunity, though, again, to come up with wise decisions that meet everybody's needs and a closer relationship in the end.
Yeah, so there's strengths, there's challenges, but the one thing that's true is it's unavoidable.
Got it.
Yep. If you have one person alone, you probably have conflict. What do I do? Do I do this? Do I do that? I'm in a conflict. Two people, okay, conflicts happen. 100 people, 150, 200, 300 people in a congregation. And churches are also maybe more places where conflict can get heated because churches deal in symbols. And with symbols, conflicts can escalate because symbols have to be done just right. And if they're not, they're worthless. If they're done just right, they save people and bring people ultimate salvation. Very good, very important. And it's hard to compromise about a symbol. Like you can't cut a symbol in half. So it's hard to find a compromise, and you have to do them just right. And churches deal in symbols.
Yeah.
So wherever you go
And
in a church, you're looking at symbols everywhere.
yeah, and symbols mean different things to different people. Like sometimes
Yeah,
the assumptions underneath what they represent can be different from people, even in the same sort of theological frame, right? There's like
yep.
little nuances that sometimes really make a big difference.
The bulletin board can be a symbol, and people can fight over that. So, anything can be a symbol. What to you might be sort of trivial to somebody else means the world. And so for them, it'd be important to do the symbol just right and not fuss with the symbol, not compromise about the symbol. No, no.
Yeah, the last thing before you tell us how to prevent conflict, I was thinking about was, I think many pastors tend to prefer to give people what they want over asserting themselves. So there's like and so in their lives before ministry, they may have negotiated conflict by just giving in because that was fine. But you can't give in to 100 people because when you have or 50 or 25 because when you have multiple people, oftentimes if you give in to one, the other person doesn't get. And
Right.
so I think sometimes pastors are less used to conflict that they can't just prevent by giving people what they want. And so I think maybe pastors have sometimes less of that built-in skill around conflict. So, but we don't want conflict because we like to please people. So, what can we do to minimize conflict?
Good question. And yeah, there's the good news of giving in is the conflict is settled. Oh, we're fine, we're happy. But the bad news is it can build resentment if the minister is giving in, giving in, giving in, and their minister's needs are unmet as they acquiesce. They could well build resentment that will surface in one form or another in an untoward way. But back to what to prevent, I think I'd be looking at norms. For example, a norm that says we are here to support each other. We're here to care for and love each other. And those norms being expressed repeatedly and unabashedly can be establishing things that say, we're going to get along, we're going to try to work together. I would be a little bit cautious about a norm that talks about something ultimate in terms of perfection. We're here to have a perfect community. Probably that would make it possible for people to say, oh, look at Buster, he's not being perfect. And have this sort of litmus test of perfection that would probably make people kind of uneasy and liable to have conflicts with one another. But norms of we're here to love each other, we are a support community, we're caring for each other as we go through the spiritual journey, or God loves us all, we're all loved as we are, we're accepting ourselves as we are. These norms can be articulated on every Sunday morning during worship. I get up and preach, and when I preach, I say we are a support community for people on various journeys towards ultimate goals, such as love or peace or union. And hearing that repeatedly, people can go, oh yeah, we're a support community. Getting more into concrete terms, we could also set up covenants. A church covenant can articulate how we relate to one another and what we do in a conflict. Covenants that say we listen to one another, we try to find solutions we can all feel good about. Those kind of covenants can set it up so that the conflicts don't have to escalate. If you think of a conflict that can go from very mild problem to solve, maybe some tension, maybe some disagreement, but then it can escalate further into a battle, into a war, and into a stage where people don't even talk to each other ever again. That's where conflicts are very painful and don't really solve problems. But if they stay, let's solve the problem, let's keep it moderate, what can we all feel good about here? Having those kind of norms that we do, that moderate problem solving can keep conflicts from escalating.
Yeah, it's sort of like you've heard of like fair fighting rules in marriage, right? Sort of
Right.
a covenant, a behavioral covenant for a church can operate in the same way. It doesn't prevent the conflict, it speaks to how we do conflict.
And to have the covenant be generated by the congregation and therefore owned by the congregation would probably be more successful than having it come from top down.
Mhm.
Um, so that people go, yeah, this is something I really bought into. I proposed and I was party to the process of making it. Then I own it, and then I'm more likely to abide by it.
Yeah, I also like that informal thing of being sort of pointing people sort of regularly in worship to sort of
Mm-hmm.
some of the higher values,
Yep.
so that they're just being saturated after week around what are we really trying to accomplish here? And so that's more
Right.
maybe more of a top-down thing you can do is
That
remind
is.
people of the values that orient us, and then there's a more shoulder to shoulder thing you can do with sort of the church establishing its behavioral covenant.
I like that. Thanks for that distinction. I guess another third kind of concept to work with has to do with how we have basically three ways to interact. We can attack, we can withdraw, or we can make friendly contact. And if the minister sets a norm that says, we're here to make friendly contact, then attack and withdraw are less um, commonly held. And friendly contact, I think the contents of friendly contact would be, what do people need? What do I need? What do you need? How can we meet our needs? Attack is more like criticism. You didn't do that right. What a stupid thing to say. Withdraw. We're not talking about it. Backing off. Silence. Neither of which help relationships go well and solve problems. But what do you need? What do I need? How do we meet our needs? Would be the friendly contact that I think, if it's normative, can be drawn into or used when there's some tension, when it's hard to think, there's some difficulty. We can go back to, yeah, we're always talking about what we need. We can do that now. Let's go there. Let's talk about what we need and how do we meet our needs successfully.
Yeah. So another thing you can do is really sort of vision that idea that when we experience conflict, the goal is to stay engaged relationally, but sort of in a space where we're both listening and talking about what we need, sort of in a way where we remember that we are brothers and sisters rather
Yeah.
than sort of winners or losers,
Yep.
or withdrawing and saying, you know what, I'm going to take my toys and go home.
Yep. Yep. And the minister's in a kind of a funny predicament here where the minister has two kind of, I don't know, jobs. On one hand, a minister is a supplier of people's needs. The people are consumers of the minister's services. And so, yeah, the minister is saying, yep, I'm here to meet your needs. I'll meet my needs at home with my dog, with my therapist. I don't know. But I'm here to sort of focus on your needs and yet still not just give into uh, all those needs and forget that the minister is secondarily a guide on people's spiritual journeys. So this is where being the supplier of happy consumers gives way to, I'm also guiding people on the journeys, and they may not be always happy on those journeys. Like Moses, probably looking at the Israelites and going, well, the Hebrews and going, you're not always happy in the Mount Sinai, but we're on this journey and it's going to get us to a holy land. So let's keep going. So the minister sort of shifts between taking care of people as consumers and guiding people into places they sometimes are uncomfortable.
Yes, yeah, provider and guide, and that can be challenging because there are needs the pastor has in order to be able to guide a church,
Yep.
right? I think oftentimes, it's not necessarily our personal needs, although I think that may be part of things, but it's also just what we need from the church so that we can be effective in guiding them.
Yeah. We would need freedom. We would need to be honest. We need to have principles. Need to know the spiritual journey is not always easy.
All right, so those are some of the things to keep the conflict sort of mild, and but also just to be like how do we walk through it, right? And
Yeah.
so set norms, vision, values, communicate like how we do conflict through staying in contact, but also staying friendly. Are there
Yeah, I
other
guess
prevention
I
ways
guess
to
if
minimize
you also
conflict?
want to get a practical would be to do some training in conflict
Hmm.
where you show people here's how we do conflict and here's ways to we negotiate, here's problem solving, here's the problem solving process. So for example, the problem solving process to train people, the problem solving process has a few steps. Step one, you name the problem in a way everybody can agree. That's sometimes a hard step
Hmm.
because people will say, oh, it's because of this and so they're being bad. The people that are being accused of being bad won't agree with that naming of the problem. They might say, no, it's you guys who are being bad. So it's a challenge to keep on to naming the problem in a way everybody can agree. But if everybody can agree with that, then we can move on to solving it. As opposed to being opponents for each other, people can be opponents of the problem. And that's where a minister can be very useful in saying, let's keep on focusing on the naming of the problem until we find a name that we can all agree upon. Let's say they do. Step one accomplished, hard job, but it's done. We name the problem in a way we all agree. Second step was be to brainstorm, it's my common sense, to brainstorm solutions.
Recording in progress.
And one rule of thumb for brainstorming is if somebody doesn't like an idea, not to critique the idea, but to propose an amendment to that idea or another idea. And that way people can feel confident. If people know that their lovely dove of an idea is going to be blasted out of the air with a shotgun, they'll not want to propose more ideas. But if they know, okay, if I propose an idea and somebody else has a better idea or somebody else has a different idea, we'll keep moving through these brainstormed ideas until we have a good list of ideas and then
Yeah, that's
select,
the improv strategy of conflict management, right?
right,
Like
yes,
improv,
and,
you never say no. Yeah, it's yes and. Yep.
right. So again, a minister can can be important in guiding the process, being one that the brainstormed ideas are nodded to. It's okay, there's an idea. Let's keep thinking of more ideas. Let's amend that idea as opposed to critiquing the ideas. Um, the ideas can be then selected. Which of these ideas do we really like? The ones that don't get favored, okay, they sort of like go into the background and we focus on the ones we do like, implement them. If they work, yay, problem solved. If they don't work, oops, back to the drawing board. Maybe we didn't name the problem accurately and come back at it again.
Yeah.
But
What do
training
you
people in the problem
and
solving process can be useful. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, I was thinking, when you brainstorm and people's ideas aren't taken, many times the way people react to that conflict is through passive aggressive stuff. They sulk, they get resentful, so they don't necessarily say, no, it has to be my idea, but the conflict starts to escalate and it sort of creates fires elsewhere. Are there things one can do to minimize sort of the passive aggressive conflict?
Yeah, I would think to acknowledge and show active listening to the ideas that have been proposed. Like, yeah, Charlie, that's an interesting idea. You're proposing we do X, Y, and Z. We got it. And I'm writing it down. Your idea is valued. People are passive aggressive when they don't when they don't believe they have power to articulate straightforwardly what they want.
Hmm.
They then have to do subterranean ways to get what they want that are used by people who believe they do not have much power to assert what they want. So to reinforce the assertions with hearing them, acknowledging them, maybe writing them down, expressing value for those assertions, tells people it's okay to assert yourself. You're safe asserting yourself. It's going to go all right. You don't have to resort to subterranean methods of being passive aggressive.
That's such an interesting point to think of. Like, I think we tend to villainize sort of passive aggressive because they're really, it can be challenging, but to reframe it as people do passive aggressive when they don't think they have voice or power, and therefore they, bubble up in different ways, gives us a resource to say, well, if they feel like they have voice and power, then they are less likely to employ passive aggressive uh, conflict.
Yeah, if you would, there's I think two ways that the world is structured. One is as a hierarchical order, survival of the fittest order, and the other is a we're in this together as a team of equals order. In the hierarchical order, it's not humane. If you're up in the hierarchy, you have to keep fighting to be up. If you're down, you're powerless and feel bad about that. And the people who are down in hierarchies do powerless things like being passive aggressive. They show their powerlessness by working in other subterranean ways to try to get a little bit of what they need. So again, one way to prevent that would be to reinforce the idea of we're in this together, we're a team of equals, everyone's voice matters. We're looking at something that can work for all of us here. And that can be an antidote to the powerlessness that people in a hierarchy can struggle with.
Interesting. I want to make sure we have time because I love that that you talk about these four stages of conflict.
Okay.
And I think that frame is helpful.
Yeah.
So why don't we talk about, conflict is starting to escalate, the water's starting to boil a little bit more, and how understanding the four stages of conflict can help us.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. This gets from prevention into cure. And I think of conflicts as going through four stages, and it's maybe useful to see the stage theory and apply it to a conflict. And I think that can be helpful. So stage one, no conflict. Everybody's doing great. People are getting along great. It's kind of like a honeymoon, like, oh, we're so happy. Stage two, not so good. Conflict is upon us. And what people do at stage two is apply pressure. And basically they're saying, I'm unhappy, you have to change. Here's where you're wrong. Here's where you should change. Here's what you're doing bad. So don't make me change. No, it's you that has to change. And I'm going to do whatever I can to make it you that changes, right up to using force and go to war. It's a very painful stage. The relationships that you would hope to have are now in a state of being at a rift. Tension is about. It's hard to feel comfortable. Very painful. War is, somebody said, General Sherman said, war is hell. This is the hell part of conflict. And people avoid conflict because of stage two being so painful. And they sometimes stay at stage one forever. And then stage one gets boring and kind of, you don't get to be yourself at stage one. So there's stage two, very painful. Ideally, people get tired of stage two and go to stage three. And stage three, you kind of intuit what would be good here. Stage three would be listening more accurately, speaking more disclosively, negotiating for what people can feel good about. It's a little bit more of a vulnerable stage. It's hard to go there when there's tension and conflict and a scary dynamics going on. But if you do, stage three can lead to stage four, which is peace. So again, stage three would be speaking more honestly, disclosively, listening to what someone is saying more accurately. I hear you saying blank. Am I hearing you accurately? Apology can happen at stage three, forgiveness. And then what can we all feel good about here to lead us to eventually, hopefully, stage four, which is peace, and things are resolved. And people, again, have a closer relationship. They've come up with policies and plans that everybody can feel good about. And that's lovely.
You
I
know
think
what?
though, go ahead.
What I remark on, right, is stage one and stage four could look really similar because they
Yep,
both lack active conflict,
right.
but one is, having chosen not to go through conflict, there's not actually peace. There's just lack of aggression.
Yeah, it can be pretend. So like families, for example, families will sometimes be characterized by stage one and stage two. So everybody's getting along, they go to stage one, they feud for a while, and then they don't resolve things, but they go back to stage one. Like, let's just pretend we're happy. It's not really an authentic way of relating at stage one. What can happen though is at stage four, you get to peace. Ah, oh, we're good. And then the peace can be clung to and revert back to stage one, where we're sort of pretending.
Mm.
And then, of course, things go underground, but then they surface into stage two. And I can think of a cycle. If we move through the stages more than once and again and again. But ideally, the good news is it can become a skill. We can become familiar with the process of conflict to the point where we go through it without a lot of fuss.
Yeah, that's great. So let's maybe go quickly through each of the stages and
Sure.
how do we progress through each? What are some tips or strategies? So if we're at the cover our eyes and ears and pretend everything's okay of stage one, what helps us move others to stage two?
Well, I guess if the minister senses that, yeah, the congregation has become phony and people are just on their best behavior all the time to the point where it's like kind of nauseating to say to there probably be some way that minister can bring up of something to wrestle with that we do have to solve, some problem we have to solve that we've maybe avoided for a long time. Or it could be just the minister preaches a sermon and doesn't know it, but steps on a landmine in the process. It can be an inadvertent little matter that the minister says, and all of a sudden, kaboom. All right, we're into it now. We're into this
Yeah,
conflict.
so you can either intentionally or unintentionally raise the temperature, create some
Yep.
anxiety in the system that moves people into stage two.
Yeah, again, I think it would be, all right, there's a problem we have not solved here. We've been kicking the can. Let's get to this problem. Or the minister just inadvertently brings up something that takes the conflict from going underground to being above ground and on the surface. Bam, here we are.
Yeah. So we're in stage two now, which is, I
Yep.
think you're totally right, not just families, but churches, which are just family systems anyways, as your book can suggest that you wrote. But it vacillates. So you get people critical, and then they quiet down, and you get back to stage one. So once people are in stage two, and they are that very painful where they're saying, the pastor isn't doing this or that. We should be doing this or that, that critical place. And of course, we're feeling like imposters and we're dealing with our own sense of like, well, maybe they're right. Maybe this is my fault. What do we do to move that conflict from stage two to stage three?
Yeah, great question. And in a way, you're kind of implying one answer, which is not to take it personally. So to even if it sounds personal, looks personal, that people are saying you, a minister can shift it to something in the level of a principle, a need that's not being met, and not a personal flaw or foible in one's character. So, okay, what do you need? What can we do that would be useful for you? I think a second uh, strategy would be to be aware of the pressure that people are using. And they can apply that pressure, that stage two pressure, in a whole list of ways: argumentation, blaming, scolding, taking one stand and refusing to consider another possible approach to a problem, taking a position and holding it, sulking, like you were referring to earlier, Nick, shunning can be another, to go, all right, these are stage 2 moves that are basically saying, I want to get someone else to change. It doesn't have to, I don't want it to be me. And to go, all right, they're doing that stage 2 thing that's getting someone else to change. They're applying pressure. And I don't want to be party to it. I don't want to feed that beast. I want to offer stage 3. And there, the minister can model stage 3 kind of activity, asking what someone really is thinking and feeling and reflecting it back accurately. I'm hearing you saying blank. Is that accurate? I'm hearing you accurately here. Ideally, the person will go, yeah, you're hearing what I'm saying. Thank you. And that's getting everybody, getting the conversation into stage 3. The minister can utilize a kind of a whole list of things that people can do at stage 3. Besides listening accurately, there's speaking about values and principles, getting out of the weeds and talking about why we're here. We're here to love each other, support each other. If nothing else, just keeping the conversation going rather than, well, I guess we're going to have to just agree to disagree. It's more like, well, let's come up with some plans, policies we all feel good about here. Let's understand each other more deeply. We're here to be a supportive and loving congregation. And so withdrawing isn't going to meet that goal. And so applying those stage 3 moves helps the whole congregation join the minister at stage 3. And then we're solving the problem.
All right. So we got to stage 3, and people are talking about the problems. How do we get to stage 4 peace? Especially, I want to frame this, especially when both parties are convinced, as much as we like each other and want the church to be okay, we fundamentally disagree about what's important, what's essential, and we understand the other side and we think they're wrong in ways that could be harmful.
Yeah, you're talking about people who sort of want to stay at stage 2 and have arguments for staying at stage 2. I mean, if in a way, what a minister can also offer is the attractive ideal or hope of stage 4. Like, gee, it must be painful to have this rift here going on, and the sense that we're divided and we don't trust each other and the other is our opponent. I can see how that is so painful. I can see also the possibility of peace when 2 sides who've been at odds reconcile. There is so much joy. It's it's a great thing to experience, and so can offer that. Here's the pain. Here's the possibility. Between the two, which do you want? Pain, possibility.
Yeah, sometimes we undervalue the relational benefits. Like, we're focused on the content of the disagreement and
Yeah,
forget that there is a cost to staying in disagreement.
yeah. I think I mentioned, Nick, a story about a samurai and a monk. I can tell that story real quick.
Sure. Yeah.
So this is a story about a samurai and a monk. So this big, tough samurai one day comes upon a little monk and says, "Monk, teach me about heaven and hell." And the monk says, "Teach you about heaven and hell? I can't teach you anything. Your blade is rusty. You smell. You're a disgrace to the samurai class." So the samurai lifts his sword. He's about to smite the monk. And the monk says, "This is hell." And the samurai goes, "Oh." He's like touched that this monk would be willing to sacrifice his life to offer this lesson about hell. The monk lowers his sword, looks at the samurai with compassion, and the monk says, "And this is heaven." And so the stage 1 would be the monk gives some kind of little homily about heaven and hell. The samurai goes away. Stage 2, no, the monk says, your blade is rusty, you smell something wrong with you, you have to change, and goes into stage 2 with the samurai. The samurai does stage 2, preparing to smite the monk. You change by ceasing to live. And that stage 2 is moved to stage 3 by the monk saying, and this is hell. Like the monk is being very vulnerable, very trusting that if he goes to stage 3, the samurai will join him. And as luck would have it, the samurai does. He sees the monk with compassion. He lowers his sword. They are both now at stage 4, and the monk says, this is heaven. And to see the process through to this point and see the possibilities of heaven, Nick, would be, I think, a valuable offering when people are stuck and unhappy at stage 2.
Yeah, that's good. And so it's really, yeah, it's just offering people that if they walk through stage 3, the possibility of stage 4 is worth it, and is
Yeah.
and it's valuable, right? Maybe so. What do you do? I feel like one of the things that's so hard about doing conflict in the church today is that people are more loosely associated to their churches
Hmm.
than ever before. There's options. People are willing to travel. Uh,
Yep.
During COVID, people realized that there were churches that agreed entirely with themselves, and so they could select themselves into churches that are aligned and just avoid conflict that way. And so, in a place where the relational cohesion is less, do you have any tips for ministers that are trying to not just leave things sort of pretend at stage 1 for fear that going to stage 2 or 3, people will just ghost on them and opt out?
Yeah. I think there you're kind of getting at what binds people into a community, and that they're not just going to depart when it gets a little tense. That kind of your question?
Yeah, or but maybe that's the answer, right? Is in order to move people through the stages, they need to be bound together. They need to have a commitment and believe that the relationship is worth it, or it'll be hard to move through those stages.
Yeah. And I think for that, it's helpful for a minister to be articulating the point, why we're here, why do we bother? And the minister would be talking about the mission of the church, what we're here to do, or the identity of the church, who we are, or a larger vision for the church, where we're ultimately going. But if I were to go back to mission, like people commit to a mission and see it as valuable and worth sacrificing for or staying true to, because the mission is saving people. It's salvific and has ultimate value and ultimate meaning. And so people who are, I would propose that people want something ultimate in their lives to make their lives meaningful, and the church's mission and being a participant in it is that salvific matter that is so valuable, so needed. So I think articulating that mission and identity and vision can bind people together for something that is of a great noble cause.
Yeah, I wonder if that's why churches that are off mission, that don't have a sense of why they're there, tend to have a lot of conflict. Right?
That could,
Because, if you're not unite if you don't have a purpose that coheres you, it would be really hard for them to ever get out of either stage 1 or stage 0.
yeah, they'd probably be fighting for that purpose. It's my purpose. It's this purpose that I say. No, it's this purpose that I say. No, it's this purpose. And it helps for a minister to be articulating that purpose. Otherwise, there's a vacuum that people will then fill and conflict as they go into trying to fill that vacuum.
So good. Well, I want to give people time and you time to answer any questions that people have.
Yeah, I
And so
want to
what
open up
I'm
the
going to
floor.
do is I'm going to stop the recording so that people, if they want to come on camera, don't have to fear being posted on YouTube. and then people can ask questions. If you don't want to get on camera, but you have a question, I have my group chat open. And so I can also read any questions that you type into the chat. But in any case, thank you, Ken. This is great content. You know, you can only do so much in 40 minutes, but you have done as much as possible. So thank you for sharing and letting us into your expertise.